So, alrighty, I think we're ready to get started then. I'm going to share my screen now so people can see this. This is where we are. Slideshow. Sorry, the controls at the top interfere with the PowerPoint controls. Beginning. Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to today's Lunch and Learn from Sustain. Today, we're going to be talking about how communities can access public land to grow food. And we are joined by three regional leaders with experience successfully working on growing food in public land. And so we've asked them to share the barriers and successes that they've experienced. A few introductions first. My name is Rhonda Tidal Payne. I'm a board member of Sustain, and I facilitate the Community Food Production Network. And I also happen to be a co-coordinator of Toronto Urban Growers. So I would like to start off with the land acknowledgement. Sustain acknowledges dual governance on these lands, including Indigenous and settler governance. Our work brings together organizations to create collective impact towards equitable and sustainable food systems with an interest in jointly elevating Indigenous-led priorities. So I'm coming to you from Toronto, Takaranto, and we are under the Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit being the current treaty holders. And of course, because I'm east of the Waskatash River in Toronto, Takaranto, I'm also covered by the Williams Treaties, which is held by 7 Anishinaabe nations. And of course, as most of us in southern Ontario know, that this is the Great Lakes Basin is this incredible fertile land that has brought together people from thousands of years and many, many nations. And we give gratitude to that land and the water for all that it has given us and taught us as well. I also like to thank the people who have been here for thousands of years who are willing to share their knowledge with us. It's particularly relevant today, of course, because as we're talking about gaining access to land, I think we need to continue to think about how our work supports Indigenous nations and communities as they work for land back and to restore their connections to ceremony and to Indigenous foodways. So let's keep that in mind as we're talking today. And while I do some more introductory stuff, if you would like to put into the chat your own land acknowledgement, if you like, and where you're joining us from, that would be really nice to know where people are coming from. Okay, so other big introduction I need to do today is about Sustain, of course. So Sustain was formed to do collaborative policy work across organizations aimed at the provincial level. And I wanted to mention a specific example of this. I mean, it was 5 years ago now, so it's a little in the past, but I think it's still quite relevant. During the pandemic, across the province, as you may remember, community gardens were not permitted to open at the beginning. But with some really intense collaborative work across Canada and across Ontario, and with the provincial government, community gardens were recognized as an essential service. And they were allowed to open as a result. And I think this is something that we can and should think about how we build on. So how do we use this recognition of community gardens as an essential service for better policy work? So this is back to Sustain. We have 5 networks listed here, and all of these networks are going to be hosting lunch and learns throughout April and June. So the first one was for buy local food just a week ago, and then there will be more coming in the coming months. So buy local food, new entrants, and food land protection. So how do we get new farmers on food growers on the land? Poverty reduction, workers' rights, housing. You can ask Orlando about that. He's been a leader on this one. Community food production is our group, and then edible education is working on school foods. There are also working groups on Indigenous food sovereignty, northern food issues, and urban food issues, two separate groups for those two. And there's a group on food waste. So you will see upcoming lunch and learns on all of these. So what exactly are we trying to do with the lunch and learns? So we're just trying to animate further discussion on policy recommendations for the provincial government. There was a recent participatory policy development process that was kind of sped up by the snap election that was called, but this is going to be an ongoing development piece. So I will later put into the chat links to the policy papers so you can see the position papers, and we can refer to them as we're talking today. So it started in September. There was a survey. There were some network meetings that happened to flesh out the content. It was reviewed by academics and published just in time for the election campaign. So as I said, they're still in development. We're still looking for input. And you are welcome to email networks@sustainontario.com. And I think, Kate, maybe you can drop the link in the chat. And I really wanted to thank Rosie Kerr for all of her work. Today was supposed to be her last day, but she wasn't able to join us. But she has been working hard since August on coordinating all these networks and ensuring that we have great material to work with. So a big thanks to her. So what are we going to do today? We are going to have three wonderful speakers. Each one will have about 10 minutes to present. We will have time for Q&A after the speakers have their 10 minutes. If you have a question during the presentations, just drop it into the chat. Kate and I are going to try and keep track of questions today. And then at the end, we'll have a section for discussion when you can turn on your cameras. So again, we're recording this presentation period right now, but when it's time for Q&A, we'll turn off the recording so that you can feel free and comfortable to have that conversation. So our topic for today, I really wanted to make sure we understand a critical distinction here about what lands we're talking about. So the policy paper focuses on a number of different aspects of community food growing. Today, we're going to talk specifically about getting access to public land. And there are some obvious distinctions. Public land can be harder to access because of demand. There may be some restrictions on selling food. Once you do get land, however, the tenure tends to be longer than in the case of a private arrangements. And governments are more likely to have programs that facilitate land access. So making those distinctions is important just for us to be focused on the policy options that are going to be most effective. And ultimately, what we want to be talking about today is community stewardship of public land. So making sure that public land is available specifically for the public. Okay, so our speakers that we have today, we are very fortunate to have Kate Veinot, who is the Director of Operations and Neighborhood Planning from Just Food in Ottawa. Kate's background in food systems work stemmed from years of small business experience in the food industry in Algonquin and Ottawa, and from being a long-time home-based food grower. Their studies in issues in urban agriculture through the University of Guelph and BSc in political science from University of Toronto led them to get more involved in food justice and community development. And they started at Just Food as a community garden network coordinator, moving on to their current role of Director of Operations and Neighborhood Planning through their increased involvement with policy work. And Kate told us she has some exciting news to share, which I will give it a chance. So Kate, thanks for being here and thanks for helping with the tech stuff. We are also very lucky to have Orlando Martín López Gómez from Food Share Toronto. Orlando is a community food growing senior manager, and he oversees Food Share's food growing projects around the city, turning underutilized schoolyards, hydro corridors, and parks into vibrant and productive urban farms and community gardens. Orlando is passionate about food justice and community leadership and provides lots of resources and supports for communities to design, implement, and run their own growing and composting projects. Yay, composting. He is a trained agronomist with incredible depth of knowledge in all aspects of growing food, as anyone who has heard Orlando speak will know. Last but not least, we have Doug Jones, who is the chair of the Waterloo Region Community Garden Network. And this network is the vision is to enable residents to have equitable access to opportunities to grow and harvest their own food in a sustainable manner. And he's also a board member of the Food Systems Roundtable in Waterloo Region. He will speak about the advantages to municipalities and others of making land available for community food production. Okay, so that is all that I need to lay out on the table now. So the table is set. We didn't talk about who would like to go first. So maybe, Kate, why don't we start with you? And I will set the timer for 10 minutes.
Sure thing. I'll just get myself set up here.
And I will stop sharing. So if you have a presentation, you're set to go.
Okay. Okay, just checking. Everybody can see the presentation? And you don't see my notes?
No notes, just presentation.
Perfect. Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks so much, Rhonda, for setting the scene here and for getting us going on our Lunch and Learn today. I'd like to just give a quick overview of the work that we do at Just Food, that we work citywide. We do operate the Community Gardening Network, which is a network of over 140 community gardens now across the city, and that the work that we do through that program is rooted in community development. So it's not 140 gardens that we are maintaining in terms of allocating plots and building or maintaining from year to year. We are working with community members to identify where they would like new community gardens, where they would like to expand existing ones, and then helping to bring that to fruition, whether that's through providing funding that we do receive through the City of Ottawa to distribute amongst community gardens, or through capacity building, leadership training, technical training, finding volunteers, learning as a community about how to bring these programs to your community when you identify that this is something that you want. So that's one of the main components of the sort of on the ground work to bring these projects to fruition, with that broader picture of our organization being to identify those political or policy levers that need to be accessed or need to be shifted in order to create equitable and enabling policy. So as Rhonda alluded to, we did have a really exciting win tomorrow, which I'll talk a little bit about. But I'm going to kind of go through some of the important critical components of having in place in order to create an enabling environment to have access to community stewardship of public lands. So one of the very first pieces to this is relationship building and relationship maintenance. Obviously physical maintenance as well of these spaces, but I'm speaking about that ongoing building of the relationship, but then keeping it up and going across multiple stakeholders, being a really key component to build an understanding of the importance of this access, why it's being requested, why it's in demand, that this is a collective message across community members or across groups that want to access these spaces, of why it's so important and why they're wanting to do the work. And if you're somebody who's interested in leading this type of work, or who may already have gotten your feet stuck in and you're looking to get more involved, one of the really important pieces here is to ensure that you're not duplicating something that's already going on. You will have a lot more success, a lot more impact by making connections with other groups that may already be doing some components of this work and having a strong understanding of what they're working on and the history of how they've gotten to where they are. So this type of relationship building and connection across what I'm referring to as stakeholders, but maybe gardeners, leaders, land stewards themselves, is building that collective understanding of the mission of what you're trying to do. So this includes across community groups or organizations, but can also include city staff, counselors, other policymakers that you may identify, and then other land stewards that have potential access for public lands. So in Algonquin, Ottawa, we have a very unique setting where there are thousands of acres of arable land from the National Capital Commission, from the NCC. So we're not just speaking about community stewardship of city lands, for instance. There are these other opportunities, hospital lands, school lands, and while they may be identified technically as private land, they're publicly accessible and publicly could be publicly stewarded. So just to keep that in mind of how you can be approaching figuring out these communal spaces and communal stewardships. So to help further this work in the city of Ottawa, we've recently brought together a group of community groups who are doing this work in what we're referring to as the Plant Strategy Working Group. And the reason that we're calling it the Plant Strategy Working Group is that even though, let's say for the community gardening network, we're really focused on food production, there's a lot of intersectionality between food production and pollinator gardens. Those interested in enhancing the tree canopy, having stormwater management components tied into all of this. There are a lot of groups may be working in silos, which you may have identified in your own work or your own communities. And we're all working towards the same type of holistic approach to really advance our systems change in terms of food production. So we do keep encountering this type of false division between food plants and non-food plants, and really trying to break down that silo to make sure, or break down that barrier to make sure that we are talking about this in a fulsome approach, that it's a fully interconnected system. So yes, we're talking about food production, but also about the need for pollinators, for naturalization of our public spaces. Now, relationship building isn't enough. This is one of the key components to ensure that you have a system around you, that you have these relationships to pull on as needed. But it's not enough when succession is a challenge. You may have a really strong connection to a city staff member who's super supportive of your project, but then they move on to another role. And the next person that comes in doesn't have the background, doesn't have agreements. And that's a really big challenge, especially if you're looking at citywide systems change in terms of having enabling policy across the city for equitable access. One really great relationship with a counselor in one ward doesn't translate to another ward, and that's not equitable. So that's why we need equitable policy. So I just want to start with my example, which is our exciting win. And that is that yesterday we did have a major win here that will allow residents to actually explicitly grow food in their right-of-way or residential boulevard. And just in case you're not familiar with what that is the front stretch of a property that is technically owned by the city that residents are responsible for keeping up. So previously in 2023, City Council brought forward a request to change the update, or sorry, to update the bylaw. for many years, so across the 28 years that Just Food has been doing this work, the bylaw stayed silent on food production. And that was what we had worked with in terms of enforcement, that it was on a case-by-case basis. So in an attempt by City Council to try to make explicitly enabling policy for gardening, it actually created an enabling policy, unenabling, whatever that word is, where it actually created a almost a fear-based policy that the city of Ottawa was happy to explicitly allow growing what they would say pollinator plants, wildflowers, but they in turn explicitly restricted growing food because one of their major levers that they use when determining policy or major metrics is liability and risk. And so because they weren't considering the impact on growing food, it created a more restrictive policy. So through the past 2 years, we have worked so hard on this and raised the fact that this may be the only space that somebody could grow food. And there is an inequitable application of enforcement when you have vague policy or policy that doesn't explicitly allow an activity. So having this update where residents will actually will be allowed to grow food in the right of way is critical for that equitable access.
That's 1 minute, Kate.
Okay. So the last thing that I'll do one quick thing here with insurance is really ensuring that we've enjoyed at a city level access to insurance through a city-based insurance plan, which if you are able to advocate for that is really critical to be able to have a supportive environment for residents to take part in these activities. So if there is an opportunity for you to advocate at the municipal level to ensure that that is accepted, do that. And then my last point here is in terms of maximizing access. One of the common messages that comes up when approaching community stewardship of public lands is competing interests. Well, we have a program that likes to use that space, so that means we can't have community gardening there, let's say. Where we found that the root of this falls under a lot of the master plans. So in the case of the city of Ottawa, that's in the Parks and Rec master plan. They do not recognize community gardening as an essential activity. So while Rhonda, the point that you raised over the pandemic being that Sustain was able to ensure that community gardening was considered an essential service, because it's not embedded in the parks master plan, they don't recognize it as something that they need to ensure is included in their development, redevelopment of park spaces. So that is something that we're struggling through right now, where we are in a time that the city of Ottawa is reviewing its policy on community gardens on city land, but it's sort of battling this already embedded master plan that does not recognize the importance of community gardens. So looking for those opportunities to ensure that the essential need to access these spaces are embedded in policy is really critical to then move on to other pieces of policy as well. I think I'm at my time, so I could go on for a lot longer, so I'll just leave it at that.
Well, I'm sure we'll have lots of questions that will enable us to dive into it a little bit more. But thanks, Kate, because I think that's a critical point that a lot of people don't know. That is, if you don't have explicit language, then in a way you don't have enabling policy. So that's great. And I also wanted to acknowledge that we have a veteran of these battles on the call today. Lorraine Johnson is here, who has done phenomenal work on that on the boulevards and other naturalized gardens. So, Orlando, how about we have you come on up?
Great. Thank you. Let me see if I can share my screen, and I hope that is working right now. It's not working. It is completely fine. Yeah, so oh, it is working
There it
great.
is.
Okay,
Yes.
cool. Let me put it as a full screen and see if that is working. It's going to be a lot of photos there, one of the projects where we are running. But thank you so much, Rhonda. And this is so excited what Kate is doing in Ottawa, and all the work happening there. Um, I am from Future, Toronto, and a little bit of the work what we do, it is our work we center of food justice in all and everything where we do to challenge the system varies and keep people from accessing to like the food where they need it to thrive. That is something very important with center of our work. And our mission is where people can get access to affordable, cultural appropriated and delicious food for celebrate and enjoy it with everyone too as well. And through that process, I have been working with this organization called Future for the last 10 years. And I had different opportunity to engage with many community groups. As Kate said, building relationships for growing, it is very important. I believe it's a lot the expert in the community who have a lot of experience and people in the community know what they wanted to do in their own spaces. And for that reason, we create these kind of systems and food sovereignty here in the city of Toronto, where it is on specific neighborhoods and location. It is several community gardens across the city of Toronto. Some of them are in public lands like parks, and other ones in private lands like schools or faith organizations or Toronto community housing. But as Kate said, that is part of the community too as well. So what you see in this photo, it is like Flemo Farm is one of our farm fields where we operated. So the program where I oversee called Community Food Growing, we have the opportunity to running with our staff in a total of 4 acres and a half. So Flemo Farm, it is only half an acre. It's in a brand new project where it's located under the Hydro Corridor. And I will explain a little bit about what was that process and how long take all these advocacy to getting access to that land. The other one, the name it is BCI Farm, where we collaborate in partnership with the school board, in specific the Toronto District School Board. It is 3 acres and a half. And the last location, it is Sunshine Gardens, where we collaborate with the Center for Addiction and Mental Health, where we have in a horticultural therapeutic garden there, where we grow a lot of food. So all these spaces enable to us to bring community together, grow a lot of cultural, delicious, clean food for the community, and providing a mentorship a lot of young people, to coming. And very important to provide employment opportunities to the community. So this is a little bit of a snapshot where you can see when this project start back at Flemo Farm. Um, I was not part of the beginning of the proposal of the project, but that was since 2012 when was a different location were selected, and we did in 2015 an incredible community consultation where a lot of people came together, and just before the pandemic we start to look in the supply chain agreements. I would say this was a lot of relationship and collaboration with the Hydro One, the City of Toronto, and Future and our scaleholder partner with Flemington Health Center, the Toronto Urban Growers, and many other local organizations who are in Flemington Park. And by 2020, just before, you know what happened there, we start to building the farm, and that was the thing where we say, okay, we need to build in this, and the farm was built, and we invite in that moment in 2021 5 community farmers. And what we are in now, we have like 10 community farmers. Where I will explain a little bit what it is, how they got in the process start. As you see, the process took long. Sometimes uh, I have, in my own experience, have been seeing projects who take like in a years. Other projects we are still waiting for the approval from the city of Toronto, or we're doing like this kind of program. So for Flemo Farm, we have like half an acre of farm operations, and The project, it is our basis in a partnership with the local agencies in the community. So this is located in North York in Flemington Park. So if one time you have been in Toronto and if you know where was Ontario Science Center, is nearby to the Ontario Science Center area. And last year we have like 10 community farmers, and I will explain what is that means to have those community gardens in those spaces. When we create these urban farms or spaces to growing food and to provide opportunity for the community, this is our like main core goal, to provide it like in a beautiful, we transform like piece of land and now in ecosystems where is a lot of the biodiversity of native plants, and we see a lot of pollinators, and we see a lot of the an ecosystem where more birds and animals and critters coming because they are living things where that exists in our gardens. I know sometimes we wanted to deter just those critters, but no, for us it's very welcome because they are part of the system. The other goal is to support the food security, and the food justice, and that is to we run in farmers markets. So this is saying a success story because we are in public lands where the community, through community farmers, getting access to grow the food where they want it, and at the same time they are able to sell the food through the farmers market within the community or the surrounding the community too as well. One of our roles where we facilitate, we do a lot of community uh, building capacity, community engagement, because the project is called SEED, CEED, and we do community engagement to mentorship to the farmers, how to provide the best practice to farming, provide the best tool to farming, because that is the key of the successes. When you have the access to the land, you need to look into the resources where you have it around, where something very simple like access to water, where you're going to water your fields or your gardens, storage, where are you going to put all your tools and equipment? And something is interesting when you have in a large scale, you're looking at infrastructure too as well, like washing a station. What does that mean to wash your vegetable or to cleaning, and how you create those systems for operating, and to have in a cooling or in a cooler to store your food, because that is very important, and especially when you're running this kind of operations. Our focus is based of we having a very strong steering committee to provide like feedbacks, guidance, and process for our farms, where it is based from local agencies and stakeholders. That is very important. I will say connecting with many partners and community residents to be part of the program have been very key for us, because that is providing the most important directions, and we get a lot of feedback. So we do a lot of surveys, we get like an inside out, and we have a huge network of community volunteers who wanted to come in. So in when we did the consultation in 2015, what was the focus of that is what we wanted to do with this land. And we need to do first, the farm is the center, and in the farm need to be a lot of community engagement. We want like people coming to feeling welcome on the space, to enjoy and celebrate, to have community farmers, that is mean residents from Flemington Park can get access to that farm, and they can grow food and sell the food. And we have something where we're running as a future called the communal plot, because that enabled to us to engage with the population in the community to provide like trainings. People can come in to volunteer, to decide some kind of the products to be donated to emergency food distribution in the community. And through this
One
process,
minute, Orlando, just a little
great.
reminder.
So this process, that is what we are doing right now. So this is the space where they are getting, and the rest is how it look like the field. So this is a photo from last year. How is the field is growing? You see, we are like under the hydro lines, and the community is coming. We are very specific, not too much design, but you can. The most important, we wanted to optimize all the space to growing the food and how like people can get access. You see, this is are the farmers preparing the field. We don't leave like bare soil. With that is in a cover crops, you know. And this is what last year, like early spring, how it looked like the field. And that small tools where it is there is calling a BCS tractor. So we try to making the best practice to this project can be replicated. And we're having a friend farms right now. It is Malvern where they have 2 acre lands. And our goal for this year is we are advocating with the city of Toronto and Hydro One to extending for another half an acre or 1 acre to this space. I will say it's overwhelming, but at the same, it's very nice and excited. So far, we have like 12 farmers for 2025, and our wait list it is very big. Every year, we put an application for new farmers, so we get like between 17 to 20 new people who are interested. I will leave it there because I know it's more presentation, but it's more questions, so we can answer those one during the process.
Thank you so much, Orlando. That is something to celebrate the expansion of both Malvern and Flemo Farm. That's great news, and congratulations on 10 years. That's also something amazing to celebrate. Okay, and now Doug, we would like to have you come on board.
Okay, fantastic. Super happy to be here. Really appreciating the work of Sustain Ontario, and thank you, Kate and Orlando, for your wonderful presentations. I attended last week at the Lunch and Learn too, and I learned a lot then. Very exciting, Orlando, to see the quality of the production work that you're doing, what you've been able to put the emphasis on a good quality production. And Kate, talking about, and both of you talking about the organizing with the people that are in the community. And this is something that we're still doing too, is pulling together that connection in terms of the relationships. So the key words that have come out to me so far, I'm going to add in this one, food security, which we're very, very interested in. Community, Kate, building that community in a sense of collaboration. And I'm going to add access and agency, access to land. And the way I think about this is that we're providing opportunity for people to grow their own food, who want to grow their own food. And we think that the result of providing an opportunity is equity, a sense of belonging, and a sense of food justice as creating an opportunity for belonging. So I'm going to show you a video here on screen sharing. I'm not sure if the audio would play on the video that I want to play, so I put that in the chat, Kate, in case you want to pick that up if the audio won't show or won't play here. And I think that is going to tell a lot of what we're talking about. In our master plan, though, we do have support for community gardens, so we don't have a lot of detail on that. We are interested in soil testing requirements. We do have funding for community gardens on public land, up to $30,000 for new community gardens. That's administered by Parks in Waterloo and by Love My Hood in Kitchener. And the townships have different policies that vary amongst the township around funding for community gardens in public spaces. In private spaces, though, the City of Kitchener has $10,000 for developing community gardens on private spaces as well. We do have KW Urban Harvester and Grow Row programs for supporting growing foods on public lands that are on roadsides and boulevards. And so we do have some of that organization in place. Basically, what we've done in our 20-acre community garden out at Petersburg on rented land, it's a hand-up model that's supporting food growing for about 60 families and groups, communities. And that hand-up model is that the farmers rent the land, they provide their own inputs, and we provide some supports for those for that operation. So it is very much a build it and they will come model. It's a very much a learn as you go model. So it's not fancy at all. I'm going to try to do this and to do the screen share for the film here and see if we can put that on. If I can find the share button here and go right to this and see if it'll play. And you can see the screen all right?
Yeah, we can see it.
We're just a little ways west of Kitchener, about 9 kilometers from downtown Kitchener on a bus route. And I think this is a really good example of people feeling included, feeling a sense of belonging and that sense of hope and their ability to contribute to their own well-being and the well-being of their families and their communities.
This garden is really important to most of families here because throughout the winter you can see that organic foods are really like expensive, but like if you grow your own food, that's the best part, right? Having a place to be able to choose what to garden, what to plant, and what is the best for your family, it's really wonderful.
We're coming from a community of farmers back home, and we reconvene here from Kenya, and I'm from Zimbabwe. So we're growing mainly crops like corn, beans, some vegetables, something that is almost similar to the staple food that we used to eat back home in Africa.
I garden here at Petersburg. I finally found somewhere where I can take as much space as I would like, because at that point I wanted to grow like onions, corn, beans. In the small community garden, I could not do that.
The new Canadians coming in are a tremendous resource in terms of talent, ability, energies, desire to achieve, and that we have to be able to open the doors to those opportunities. Food is life, but also food is culture. So let's see if we can stop that now sufficiently here. And yeah, so did I stop screen sharing yet? No, okay. Yeah, so that's this. What's that?
No, you're all okay now, Doug.
What do we got now?
You're up on the screen, so you can continue presenting.
I'm just hearing voices in the background here. Just hang on a second. There's something going on here. Not sure what's going on right there.
Maybe one of the YouTube video may have gone into a
Hang on a second.
secondary one.
Yeah, it may still be playing, but we don't hear
It
it.
is. Okay, so I'm going to stop it so I can hear. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so I'm going to go back to another screen share. I got a bit of a PowerPoint presentation here for you as well, and just a bit about the community garden, which is quite an overview. I'm not seeing a lot of what. Oh, you know what? I canceled the PowerPoint. All right, so yeah. Not sure I can pick it up in time. All right. Anyway, the Community Garden Network does oversee about 103 community gardens. One of the things that in the urban areas of the region, and we're interested in like land that's set aside for development and making contracts with developers as well that may control that land. I think most people know that there's a tax break if the if the land is farmed, so that people can still be taxed at the farm rate. So developers are interested in that type of arrangement. And then how do we fund these things? What does it look like in terms of sovereignty become the questions that I'm interested in. And I don't know really what else to say about that, but those are the considerations that I'm interested in. We do have some permaculture setups as well. We've got 25 acres of permaculture for us. We're very interested in non-edible plants and how they fit into our ecosystems and doing that training around things that are important for the environment. But what I'm particularly interested in is the idea that people coming from agrarian cultures define food insecurity very differently. They define food insecurity as not being able to grow their own food. And I found that very significant. So in my experience of coming from my family coming from a poor farm in Prince Edward Island and my dad becoming a geneticist, we had opportunities to talk about food production problems around the world. People from all over the world would be in our home talking about their problems feeding their people. And so the handout from my dad would be to say, Doug, there's 3 billion people on this planet. We've got to figure out how to feed them. So I'm very interested in these issues of food security and how we meet the needs for people who need that sense of belonging that comes from an opportunity to grow food. The access to land piece is a tough one. And I guess the funding part is the one that really concerns me as much as anything. In the urban areas, we're often looking at disturbed soil and soil testing and wondering how do we manage the soil testing requirements. They're very expensive. The requirements are that we have to have a fence of some sort, which does not have to be a metal fence. It can be a food hedge that's managed around that garden space as well. And we're particularly interested in collaborating with people like House of Friendship and the other food distros here so that they have access to the food that we're producing in the community gardens. When we see people growing food in Gladys was on the film there. She's from Kenya. If she saves money on food, she's able to put money back to her family back in Kenya again. So this is a global impact that we're having. If we grow food here and become more self-sufficient, which is the dominant ethos that I grew up with, is you produce your own food and you eat what you grow, then we're also reducing demand on global food systems as well. We know our supply chain is very vulnerable. And I walked into the grocery store the other day and I realized that the only reason why I was going to be food secure was because I had enough money to buy that food. The underlying causes of food insecurity are poverty. And Valerie Tarasuk's research from University of Toronto, longitudinal research indicates that we really need to be able to support people to have enough money to buy food. I think that's astoundingly important. But I also think that our federal food programs that are offering money for school food programs need to be able to put an emphasis on local food. The European research is really good on how we make more effective, contribute to the local value chain around food production. And these are pay-as-you-can plans all the way through, where the goal is to eliminate the food bank. The organic food bank in Toronto wants to be eliminated. They've topped Valerie's research as well in this conversation. And basically, we're looking at food opportunities all the way through the system where people can contribute to their own well-being. So in my research working with families, I do psychotherapy for a living. I'm very interested in the role of having young people learn how to contribute for themselves. And this is why the family aspect of this work is so important in terms of growing food locally.
That's
Hey,
about
my
9 minutes there, Doug.
Yeah.
One more minute. Thanks.
1 more minute, you said?
Yep.
Oh, I thought I was out of time. All right, so the I was rushing there to finish that off, but you get what I'm interested in. So one of the problems have been vandalism at the community gardens, and people get very upset at the idea of vandalism. And I think the question has to be, are you hungry? Do you want to grow food too? Would you like to join us? Like it's an act of inclusion that we're really, really interested in. So I see that type of social deviance as a sign of inequity, and people feel experiencing a lack of opportunity. And really, our job is to create this opportunity for a sense of belonging and some sense of justice, some sense that people are being heard and that what they say matters to them. So we can do this through food. We can do this through opportunities for people to do it. They ask me all the time, the lawyers ask me, can we make spaces for kids who are on youth drug programs? Can we make spaces for people for the community service hours to take out invasive species and plant native species? And yes, we can. But we need more of those skills that Kate has. Kate, you have to come to my region now and work for us from now on. In Orlando, we need your skills in terms of how to grow the food. So I'm sure there's many other people here on the call that have these skills as well. But how do we collaborate better has to be the big question that I will end with.
Well, thank you so much, Doug. What a great note to end on in terms of, if we're talking about public land, making space for people, whether they're gardeners or not, I think is a huge topic. So many things that we covered here. We've got about 10 minutes left. So I wanted to make sure that we have time for questions. So people can either drop a question in the chat box, or if you want to raise your hand and ask a question, you're welcome to do that too. And Kate, if we can just turn off the recording now so that people can